Here we are today getting ready to whip up a really, really nice meal to celebrate our Eagles win today. We pulled it off. It wasn't pretty against the Bills, but we pulled it off. We welcomed Shady McCoy home. Had a decent game today, but just didn't have enough. Eagles are racing to the finish here, so we'll see what happens in this horrible NFC East division. But that doesn't stop me from eating an incredible meal. Today, I'm going to show you how to whip up a meal using one of the best meats you can possibly eat. Very difficult to get unless you have good friends like I do. And we're going to whip up a stew today using venison. I've got some real nice venison steaks here. I want to thank my good friend Buster O'Donnell and his son Cody, 16 years old and popped his deer this year. And I am always one of the person who gets a little bit of spoils from the victory. So thank you, Cody. Thank you, Buster, for getting me this venison steak. I'm going to show you how I love to prepare venison. Anybody that doesn't like to eat it, you're going to try my stew recipe, and I will convert anybody to a venison connoisseur. So one of the things I like to do with the venison, first off, is when you get it back from wherever you get your venison prepared, set it out in a tray and let it sit in a tray overnight in the refrigerator. Let all the blood from the venison kind of drain out a little bit. The blood can tend to make the venison a little bit more on the gamey side. Our taste buds aren't used to eating it, so sometimes that can be a little bit of a turnoff for people that are typical steak eaters. So I like to let that blood drain a little bit, dump it out into the sink, and then you've got it. The other thing we're going to need is 2 cups of beef stock. We're going to need a whole cup of whole sifted flour. You're going to need an onion. I choose red onion. I like them a little bit better for me. You're going to need some minced garlic or fresh garlic. I'm going to use minced to make it a little bit quicker. I like to get 1 bag, about a pound of new potatoes or small potatoes here that are ready to go. 1 pound bag of your baby carrots, your finger carrots. We're going to need a really nice red wine. I'm going to use a cab here. You can use a cooking wine, but for this stew, I like to use something a little bit more special, so I'm going to use a little bit of red wine. I certainly don't open a bottle for this. If I've got some red wine laying around, this bottle here is almost tapped out, so I'm just going to finish this bottle off here making my stew today. And I'm using Francis Coppola's Cabernet Sauvignon. We're also going to need some Worcestershire sauce. Can't have a good stew without that. Our seasonings today are going to be very simple. Some pepper, some salt. We're going to use some basil, some thyme, and some rosemary. This can be fresh, can be dried, whatever you've got on hand. I'm going to show you that. And then the last thing we're going to need today is a little bit of olive oil. I'm going to make this stew in a pressure cooker. I'm going to cut this time down. Instead of slaving in the kitchen here for about 45 minutes to an hour and a half, I'm going to have this stew ready to go in about 15 minutes, ready to rock and roll. The pressure cooker I use is actually the Power Cooker XL. Very good pressure cooker. Love using it. And I'm going to show you how to whip up this venison here. So we're going to start off by cubing our venison. Just by taking our venison and cutting that venison down into small cubes. Also, as you're cutting up your venison here, make sure that you get rid of any of the silver or silky membrane that's on the venison. That can be very tough. So make sure any of the silver skin membrane in the venison, that you're getting rid of that as you're cubing up the venison. Okay, so I'm just finishing up here cubing my venison, getting it ready for my stew. As you can see, a really good sharp knife makes very quick work of this process. So if you want to learn how to get the knives that I use in a kitchen, that I trust in a kitchen, these are absolutely the best quality knives that money can buy. And if you want to learn how to get these knives, you can just send me a note here through my Facebook, and I will be happy to show you how to get a set of these knives. They are absolutely the best knives, and extremely sharp. Lifetime guarantee will always keep their edge. But this isn't an infomercial for the knife, just letting you know that good knives are hard to find. A lot of places want to overcharge you for good quality knives, and there's no need to pay a lot of money for fancy knives. So now we've got these puppies cubed up. You know, just good, nice little 1-inch chunks that I like to have for my stew. The venison is cubed up. We'll put this off to the side here for a moment. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to prepare the coating that I like to use. So you need a 1 quart or 1 gallon Ziploc baggie. Okay. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my basil and I'm going to put into the flour about a tablespoon of basil. going to take my rosemary, again, probably another tablespoon of rosemary. I'm going to take my thyme, and I'm going to pop in there about a tablespoon of thyme. Take a little bit of get a fresh spoon here. Going to cut off camera for a second. My drawer's behind the camera there. And I'm just going to mix that in there, the thyme, the basil, the rosemary. I'm going to mix that into my flour mixture. Okay. We're going to take the salt, and we're going to get some salt sprinkled on here. Just coat the venison, a little bit of salt. And don't be too crazy with the salt. You can always add the taste later, but I don't want that salt to stew in there and make it a little bit too salty. We're going to take our pepper. Nothing like opening up your pepper container with your teeth, just to have it. And make sure that we get that nice and coated with salt and pepper. We're going to take our 1 quart baggie, and we're going to dump our flour in here. We're going to coat our venison with that flour. By doing this, when I sear down the venison here in a moment in the pressure cooker and coat it with the flour, as this starts to cook inside that pressure cooker, it's going to create a really nice roux, real thick, real nice base, and help thicken up that base while the pressure cooker is doing the work. So I'm going to put the venison here into the baggie with my flour mixture. Just kind of zip that puppy up and give it a nice liberal shake. Okay, so we coated up the venison inside of our plastic bag. What I like to do is I take the plastic bag with all the mixture after I'm done shaking it. I dump it into a wire strainer, and then I just sift it over the sink and get rid of all the flour, so I'm just left with nice coated pieces of venison here. You can see how well coated they are, and all that venison's got all that nice flavor, the rosemary, the thyme, the basil being kicked up into that, along with the salt, pepper there into the venison. Next thing we're going to do is I'm going to take the lid off my pressure cooker here. I'm going to set this on my pressure cooker. I just hit the meat cook button. One of the other reasons I love this pressure cooker XL is because I can sear in this pan. I can use it as a slow cooker. I can use it as a rice steamer. I can do my beans and lentils in here, and I can use it as a full-blown pressure cooker. It's a 10 quart, so it's got a real nice heavy stock to it. I mean, 10 quarts is it's pretty big for a pressure cooker. So I'm going to give that a couple seconds here to get up to heat, and then I'll be right back with you. Our pressure cooker is getting up to heat now. So I'm going to take my venison. I'm going to take some olive oil, put about 3-4 tablespoons of olive oil. Pick up my cap there. About 3 or 4 tablespoons of olive oil into the pressure cooker. And then I'm going to add my venison. And I'm going to start to sear that up a little bit and brown it. And get that nice and brown, get that nice and cooked up in there. While that's browning, I'm going to take my red onion and I'm going to give that a cut. I don't want to cut this too thin, so I just like to do some nice chunks of onion. Just like that. I'll keep that off to the side. I'm going to put 2 tablespoons of garlic in here. Once this gets up to temp, I'll put the garlic and the onion in. Once this meat starts to brown, it's starting to get nice and brown right now. Okay, so the meat's getting nice and brown right now. So what we're going to do is we're going to add the onion into here. Next, we're going to add the garlic. 2 tablespoons of garlic. That last one was a heaping tablespoon. We love garlic. I'm going to stir that in there, let everything get incorporated. And I'm going to let that onion in there just a little bit, just enough where it starts to let go of some of its juices and the onion starts to clarify a little bit. I don't want to overcook it too much. This is going to be pressure cooked in a stew here. I don't want those onions to get too mushy, so I'm just going to let a little bit of that flavor release. Okay, now the onions are starting to clarify. They're starting to reduce down there a little bit with the garlic. Now I'm going to add some red wine. I'm going to render this red wine down, let the alcohol get cooked out of it, and it's going to pick up all that love that is now coated onto the bottom of my pressure cooker. So I'm going to put in about a cup of red wine. And right now it's going to reduce that red wine down, and it's going to take all that love that's sitting on the bottom of that pressure cooker right now. It's going to release that off from the bottom of the pressure cooker. It's going to start to thicken up a little bit, and this is the beginning of this roux that is going to make for a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful stew. So we're going to let that cook just for a few minutes, get the alcohol out of it. As you're stirring through your pan and you take a peek at the bottom, you'll know when you're getting about there, everything is let go from the bottom and you've got a pretty clean pan on the bottom, and that is a pretty good sign that everything is rock and rolling for you just the way that you want it to go. So right now what we're going to do is we're going to pop in about a quarter cup of our Worcestershire sauce. Mix that up in there. We're going to add our carrots, finger-length carrots. We're going to add our potatoes, yummy, yummy. Now the red wine, the potatoes, the carrots, and then when I add this beef stock to it, it's going to reduce or dilute a little bit of the seasonings that we used on the venison. So it's about this time, once I add my vegetables in there, I'm going to coat again with a little bit of salt and pepper. I'm going to drop in a little bit of thyme, not too much, we've got it already in there. A little bit of basil across the top here of my veggies. A little bit of rosemary across the top of my veggies. Stir all that in there, get it all nice and incorporated. Now, I'm going to pop in 2 cups of beef stock. I'm going to place my lid on my pressure cooker. I'm going to make sure my pressure cooker is set so that it pressurizes. It's locked right now. Beautiful, beautiful part about this is I'm just going to cancel that off. I'm going to hit my chicken meat again for 15 minutes. This puppy's going to come to temp on its own. It's going to come to pressure on its own. And then as soon as it's done cooking, going to beep. It's going to kick over to a warm cycle. And we're going to have some venison stew. I'll see you back here in about 15 minutes. Okay, I'll tell you what's great, what's really great about this Power XL pressure cooker. Again, this is not a promo. I don't get paid by them. I just happen to love this appliance. It is probably my go-to appliance in the kitchen when I do not have time. 15 minutes and our stew is ready. I've already put the pressure back out of this. I'm getting ready to open it for the first time, but what's beautiful about the Power Cooker XL is while I was watching Green Bay's second drive for a touchdown, now they're beating those Cowboys 14-0. Great job, Green Bay. This kicked over to the warm cycle. So I'm not afraid to burn or over pressure cook. You know, traditional pressure cookers on the stove, they just keep going and going and going and going and going. You got to remember them. You got to turn off your oven or your stove, But here, once that is done cooking, it kicks over to a warm cycle, powers down the pressure cooker and keeps things warm and ready to go. So this literally could have sat here for hours and would not have messed up the consistency of my stew. We're getting ready to open up this stew. Let's take a look. I'm going to open up the pressure cooker and wow, let's take a look at this. Take a look at that stew. Venison stew, 15 minutes, ready to rock and roll. Look how nice and rich that stew got with the red wine, Worcestershire sauce, a little bit of beef stock. Look how rich it got done. Those potatoes are ready to go. They're breaking open. And that's when you know everything is ready. Let's plate this puppy and enjoy the rest of this game. I mean, this is just phenomenal. All those onions, the potatoes, the carrots, the venison. And nothing goes better with venison stew then a couple King's Hawaiian dinner rolls. Take a look at that. I'm going to enjoy the rest of this game while I watch Dallas go down. And I'm going to enjoy my stew while the rest of you get hungry looking. Take care.
Man. Wow. This is killer. I'm telling you. Anybody who hasn't tried venison, try this stew recipe. You will fall in love. Best meat you can get. But I'm going to tell you, I want to give a big special thank you. A lot of shout out. Big love to my friend Buster O'Donnell. Him and his boy pegged a nice deer. Always sharing the wealth with me, getting me this venison. And I love it. So not much for going out there in the cold and hunting it. But if you kill it and you need somebody to cook it, I'm your guy. So this is Steve Royer signing out with my venison stew. Take care, and let's go Green Bay beat these Cowboys. Let's go Eagles!